I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Senator Tolentino. Sir, thank you for coming. And Senator Pia Cayetano and Senator Amy Marcos. So we definitely now have a quorum. Thank you. Um, Thank you, my dear colleagues, for joining us today. With that, the chair declares the presence of a quorum. May I call on now on the committee secretary to acknowledge the resource persons and guests in attendance today, both physically and virtually. Committee secretary.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Joining us for today's continuation of our organizational meeting are as follows. From the Committee on Energy, we have Secretary Rafael Rotilla with ASEC Mario Marasigan and Head Executive Assistant Ronald Conquilla and Director Rino Abad. From the Energy Regulatory Commission, we have the chairperson, Attorney Mona Lisa de Malanta, with Commissioner Florecinda Digal. Virtually present are as follows. From the Power Sector Assets and Liabilities Management Corporation, PISAM, Ms. Irene Joy Besido Garcia, the President and CEO, with Ms. Emelina Blanco. From the Philippine Electricity Market Corporation, PEMC, we have Attorney Leonilo Polido III and Ms. Clares Lauren Halocon. From the National Power Corporation, we have Attorney Melchor Ridulme, the officer in charge, with Mr. Rene Baruela. From the National Transmission Corporation, Transco, we have Attorney Jainal Abidin Bajin II, the President and CEO. With Ms. Maria Teresa Laranang. From the Philippine National Oil Company, we have Mr. Jesus Cristino Posadas, the President and CEO. From the PNOC Exploration Corporation, PNOCEC, we have Maria Lotgarda Lacava, the Vice President for Corporate Services Division, and Zarina Kazia Suarez, the OIC General Counsel and Acting Compliance Officer. From the PNOC Renewables, we have Mr. John Arenas, the President and CEO, with Mr. Pedro Lita Jr., the EVP and COO. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Once again, I'd like to acknowledge the physical presence of Senator Francis Tolentino and the virtual presence of Senator Pia Cayetano and Senator Amy Marcos. Now, to have an orderly discussion with the indulgence of my fellow senators, we will first allow the presentation from the resource person to finish before members of the committee can ask questions. All presenters shall be given 10 minutes each presentation. If any member of this committee wishes to ask a clarificatory question or make any manifestation, you shall be given a maximum of 15 minutes. Let us now continue with the presentation of the Department of Energy where we left off. That was held on August 10, and Secretary Lutilla, would you like to continue where you left off the last time we were here?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, in our last meeting, Mr. Chairman, and Senator Tolentino and Senator De La Rosa and Senator Marcos and Senator, what's the other senator?
I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Senator Bato de la Rosa and Senator Gatchalian. Go ahead, Secretary Rutilla.
Senator Gatchalian and Senator Ejercito. So essentially, Mr. Chairman, the gist of our presentation were presented last time, but I know that you had no chance to ask of the Energy Regulatory Commission and of our attached agencies. So we are at your pleasure and the committee's pleasure on how you would want to proceed. We can give them the chance to actually present.
Okay, who would like to present first after Secretary Lutilla? Okay, would you like to do the honors? Attorney Mona Lisa de Malanta, Chairperson and CEO of ERC. Go ahead po, Madam.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon to the honorable members of the Commission. I'm here to represent the Energy Regulatory Commission. If the slides can be shared, we prepared just a couple of slides, Your Honor, for this afternoon's presentation. And this is just to provide a brief overview of the Energy Regulatory Commission and what falls under the mandate of the Energy Regulatory Commission. To be, as we are mindful of time, while maybe the slides are being shared, I'll start discussing, sir, if you don't mind, even if the slides are not yet ready. But the Energy Regulatory Commission was created under the EPIRA, the Republic Act 9136, and it basically has 5 fundamental mandates. Under Section 43 of EPIRA, it is to promote competition since EPIRA deregulated the sector, most of the sectors, and instituted competitive principles, competition principles in the generation and supply side. The mandate of ERC, among those identified in Section 43, proposes or focuses on the promotion of competition. This includes the imposing penalties or penal provisions on abuse of market power. Another pillar for the mandate of the EPIRA, mandate of ERC for the EPIRA, is to encourage market development. Also, monitoring of the market and ensuring consumer choice. These are the basic mandates under Section 43. I hope the slides can be prepared so we can follow the discussion points. But even after EPIRA was passed in 2001, the mandate of ERC has evolved because of subsequent laws that were passed. We can go to slide 4, Your Honor, if you have a copy of the next page box, if you have a copy of the presentation. The laws that were passed after EPIRA are in slide 4, and this includes primarily the Renewable Energy Act, which really I think not just for the ERC but also for the DOE, demanded additional responsibilities and additional obligations on both agencies. The Lifeline Rate Act was also passed, Republic Act 11552, and more recently, the Microgrid Systems Act, the Murang Kuryente Act, the Anti-Pilferage Act. These are just among those that evolved the mandate of the ERC. In the next slide, if you have copies, sir, of the presentation. Slide 5, we're already in slide 5. Okay, slide 5 po. Okay. This gives you a brief overview of the organization, ERC as an agency. What you see here are the functional services of the agency as well as the divisions. What this doesn't show is the number of employees. We currently have 330 employees in ERC. These 330 employees, pursuant to the mandate created in the laws that I have mentioned earlier, supervise 581 power plants, including 227 generation companies, 141 distribution utilities and electric cooperatives, 119 retail electricity suppliers, and 376 WESM participants. These are all those registered in our spot market. Those 376 WESM participants, just to give a flavor of the dynamism in the sector, trades at 288 intervals a day because we are now in a 5-minute market. So this agency supervises a 630 billion peso industry. In the next slide, you will see the various agencies, together with some that are present today, that ERC will need to or does work with and have to coordinate with in order to perform its mandate more effectively. In the next slide, you will see what we call the regulatory pillars. In what sense do we regulate the industry? What we see as our function is we regulate on the economic aspect of the industry, including pricing and cost, the technical aspect, making sure that all participants are performing according to standards, and the legal aspect, making sure that all transactions are legal, valid, including monitoring the behavior of participants in the market to make sure that there's no anti-competitive behavior. The output of this regulatory function can be seen in decisions, orders, rules, permits, licenses issued by the agency. Just in 2021 to the first half of 2022 alone, the agency has issued, just to give an idea, 43 approvals of power supply agreements covering about 1,200 megawatts of projects. We also have, let me just see, resolved 118 consumer complaints, but we still have, admittedly, more to resolve. We have also approved 17 capital expenditure applications by regulated entities, but we still have to resolve more than 200 CapEx applications. Those are just illustrations of what the agency produces as its output in the performance of its functions. In the next slide, you will see the sectoral functions as identified by EPIRA. So for the generation sector and the supply sector, we shaded it differently because these are the deregulated sectors of the industry. For these sectors, our performance of our mandate is limited to what was stated in EPIRA and the subsequent laws. I will not go to each one of them, but we can discuss later if there are questions. The focus of the regulator is on the regulated industries, and these are the transmission sector and the distribution sector. You'll see from the enumeration of the functions that these are, the bulk of it is really on the rate-making function of the agency. In the subsequent slides, I will not go through each one of them, but you'll see that these are the enumeration of the mandates of the ERC with respect to the EPIRA, the Renewable Energy Act, and the other laws that I mentioned earlier. So we can just go through each one of them later if you have questions, Your Honor. I think that's the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Mona Lisa de Malanta, Chairperson and CEO, ERC. Okay, and who's the next resource person who would like to make any presentation?
We have our attached agencies, Mr. Chairman, are available in case you would want them to present. They are available by remote.
Okay, and these attached agencies who are now available by remote, by hybrid, we have Attorney Irene Garcia
Yes, from the PISAM,
from
the
PISAM.
Power Sector Assets and Liabilities Management.
We have PNOC. I lost him. Okay, Attorney Melchor Redulme,
From NAPOCOR, National Power Corporation.
National Power Corporation.
Yes.
And How about John J. Arenas? I forgot what's
He's
his
with
title.
PNOC
He's-
Renewables.
PNOC Renewables. Okay. And then we have Mr. Pedro El Lite Jr. and he's with PNOC as well.
PNOC.
And then uh,
Yeah.
we have people from NEA,
Yes,
HESA,
National Electrification Administration.
National Irrigation. Okay.
Electrification.
No, National Electric. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yes, I would like the NEA to make a presentation pertaining to the hot issue wherein there's been lots of problems facing these electric cooperatives and the reason why so many brownouts occurring right now nationwide. And recently, may problema pong nangyari sa Benguet na kung saan itong electric cooperative ay hindi sila sigurado kung sino ba talaga ang kikilalanin nilang general manager because NAIA installed one when in fact meron naman inelect yung cooperative so they don't know, they're in a quandary who to follow. So anybody from NAIA now would like to make a presentation and make some clarificatory statements?
I think they're ready, Chair. That's the Administrator Waneza. Administrator Waneza, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, Senator Tolpo, and the Energy Committee, Senate Energy Committee, and to everyone attending this hearing. And with the due indulgence of the Chairman, Senator Tolfo, what we have prepared is the National Electrification Administration Electrification Program and Legislative Agenda. And however, if a question on the case of Beneco is specifically raised, we can address we can explain actually the situation of the Beneco, Your Honor.
Lampa. Okay. Can we get the gentleman's name? I don't have his name except that it says here Nia Heza. Can somebody give me a name of this gentleman? Sorry, sir. I would like to address you properly by
Administrator
calling your name. Vanessa.
Juaneza, Chair. Emmanuel.
Okay, Mr. Emmanuel Waneza. Yes, Administrator Waneza, if you would, please. I really want to, even from the last hearing, I wanted to get an explanation as to why NEA installed someone dun sa Beneco when in fact Beneco has their own general manager that they elected. So gusto ko lang pong clarification kasi even a lot of my listeners and viewers because it was aired on my program and they wanted to know ano ba talagang nangyaring kaguluhan at bakit daw nakikialamin niya. Siguro this is the time na para makapagbigay po kayo ng linaw doon po sa nangyari. Bakit po nangyari yung dapat mangyari sa palagay po ninyo. And I'm talking about Beneco, sir. Mr.
Yes,
Waneza.
Yes, Your Honor. And Mr. Chair, Senator Tolfo, can I have my deputy for legal, Deputy Attorney Rosan, to give the chronology of what happened in the Beneco case, Your Honor.
Okay, so Attorney, Mr. Rosano, Attorney Rosan Rosero Lee, is that who you're referring to? Mr. Waneza? He's the Deputy Administrator for Legal Services, right?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, then Mr. Rosan Rosero Lee is being recognized. Where's the gentleman?
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is
Honorable
that- is it
Senator
Miss?
Tulfo. I happen to be a girl, sir.
I'm very sorry
Attorney
about
Rosan
that.
Rosero Lee po.
I'm very, very sorry, madam. I'm
Uh,
sorry. Okay.
Opo. Well,
Excuse me, it says Mr. I'm sorry. So it's not my mistake. I'm sorry about that again, one more time. Go ahead po, madam.
yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chair, and to the members of the Senate Committee on Energy. In compliance, just for information, Mr. Chair, the National Electrification Administration has forwarded a letter addressed to the chairman in a letter dated August 15, 2022, including the briefer on the chronology of what happened to the Bineco relative to the appointment of Attorney Rafael and the continued stay of or discharge of Engineer Lico Ben's function as the general manager. So unless the chairman and the members of the committee will give me the indulgence of reading the briefer, which we already have forwarded in advance to the good senator.
Go ahead, Madam Rosan Rosero Lee. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, sir, if I may. In a letter dated August 15, 2022, under the signature of our administrator, Emmanuel P. Wanesa, we have stated therein that the letter pertains to the request to be apprised on the issues of Beneco or the Benguet Electric Cooperative Incorporated. The National Electrification Administration, together with the Cooperative Development Authority or the CDA, issued a joint statement encouraging the public to recognize and transact with Attorney Ana Maria Paz Rafael. While the NEA is mindful of the pending cases where the legality of the appointment of Attorney Rafael is being questioned, it is adamant in its position that the appointment of Attorney Rafael is valid and binding unless otherwise declared by the court. This position is based on the provision of Republic Act 10531, which states that no injunction or temporary restraining order shall be issued against the implementation of any order, ruling, or decision of the NEA except by the Court of Appeals and only upon the posting of a bond sufficient to cover the liabilities and expenditures arising during the
Excuse me,
Yes, sir.
Madam Rosan, you've been very technical. I just need a very simple answer to a very simple question.
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay, please don't go very technical on me.
Okay.
I just need to know what were the basis for you guys in the NEA appointing someone when in fact meron na pong general manager doon na ibinoto po ng kooperatiba. Pakisagot lang po, huwag niyo na po sabihin yung mga batas-batas na yan, please.
Okay, yes, sir.
Sabi niyo lang po, sir, ano pong basihan? Huwag na
Yes.
tayo magbigay ng mga batas.
Okay.
Islam.
Thank you, Mr.
Problema,
Senator.
nagkaroon ba ng katiwalian? Ano ba, yung records ba not in order? Nagreklamo ba yung mga consumer, etc. Huwag mo yung technical at huwag mo yung mga batas-batas,
Yes,
please.
sir. If I may be allowed.
And then also, wala po akong natanggap yung binabasa niyo po. I did not receive. My office hasn't received.
Oh, that is
The
why,
one that you're
sir.
reading.
You could have been informed in advance of the briefer. But anyway, I'll try to make it as brief as and as informative as it can be. The issue on the seat of the general manager of Beneco started when the late general manager Gerardo P. Versosa of Beneco retired on April 30, 2020. Upon his retirement, the Beneco board passed 3 resolutions in 2020 appointing Beneco Assistant General Manager Engineer Melchor S. Licubin as the General Manager of Beneco. However, in a letter dated August 7, 2020, the former Administrator Edgardo Armasungsong advised the Beneco Board to adhere to the provisions of NEA Memorandum 2017-035. This is the NEA memo providing for the process of the selection, hiring, appointment, and suspension of general managers. In other words, Mr. Chair, even if the Beneco had already appointed Engineer Melchor S. Licobin as the general manager of Beneco, we advised Beneco that still the appointment of the general manager of Beneco, as is with all other electric cooperatives, should adhere to NEA Memorandum number 2017-3035.
Oo nga po, oo nga po.
Opo.
Nag-elect po yung electric cooperative ng
Yes, sir.
kanila pong general manager. And then sabi niyo po, nag-appoint po kayo kasi nga po pinapayagan sa batas yan. Ano nga pong basihan? Yung po ba dahil may katiwalian? Kasi po sabi niyo, of course, nasa batas po natin yan. So can you just do that sa lahat po ng kooperatiba? Kapag hindi niyo po nagustuhan pagmumukha, itsura, ugali, o hindi niyo kabagan, hindi niyo kaibigan, pwede niyo lang po randomly palitan. Yan po yung ibig ko sabihin. So ano po yung basihan? Please, what was the basis para kayo po ay mag-appoint ng panibagong tao ninyo versus meron pong inelect ng board of directors ng kooperatiba. Yun lang po
Thank
gusto
you.
na malaman.
Opo,
Although I understand na nasa patas po yan, pinapayagan po yan, karapatan po ninyo, nasa kapangyarihan po yan ng NEA na mag-appoint if they're not happy. Pero ano pong basihan? Kung hindi kayo happy, bakit po hindi kayo happy doon sa inelect po ng board of directors ng Beneco?
Yes, sir. If I may
Decision para
respond to
mag-appoint
that
ng sarili
po.
nyo. I think just on the record, hindi ko po kilala kung sino man po yung inelect ng Beneco. And I haven't even talked to the guy, whoever he is. And I haven't even talked to the person dun sa appoint lang. Oh, I'm sorry, I would like to take that back. Nakausap ko pala sa Wanted sa radyo that guy over the phone. Although medyo limited lang po yung mga binigay niya sa aking answers. Pero I just want clarification because these are the things na marami po nagtatanong sa akin. Kasi once we aired that sa radio program ko, I got tons of comments from netizens and they want clarification. Yun lang po yun, ma'am. Please, ma'am.
Yes,
Simple
we
answer,
understand.
simple question needs simple answer, please.
And yes, sir, if I may, sir. Ang ibig po kasi naming sabihin, sir, despite po, sir, na nag-appoint na ang Beneco Board ng kanilang general manager, ipinaalam po namin sa kanila na kailangan pong dumaan sa proseso.
At ano pong proseso?
Yun pong nasa NEA Memorandum number 2017-035. Wala pong electric cooperative na nagkaroon ng general manager na hindi po dumaan sa proseso under ng NEA Memorandum 2017-035.
So what you're saying is hindi dumaan po sa proseso itong pag-elect ng Beneco doon po sa general manager nila na kanila pong iniluklok. Is that what you're saying? Hindi po dumaan sa proseso? Like sa other cooperative na dumaan sa proseso kaya hindi po nakialam yung NEA?
Nung pong nilabas ng Beneco yung kanilang board resolution appointing Engineer Licuben as the general manager of Beneco, hindi pa po yun dumaan sa proseso ng NEA Memo 2017-035.
Okay.
Kaya nga po, sinulatan po ng NEA ang Beneco na yung NEA cannot act on the board resolution of Beneco appointing Engineer Licuben as the general manager because his appointment should go through the process as provided under NEA Memo 2017-035 po.
Sorry, I don't have that 2017 memo, ma'am, but can you tell me what's in it? What's in 2017? What does it say?
The NEA Memo 2017-035 is the revised policy on the selection, hiring, termination of service suspension for general managers of electric cooperatives. Dito po, Mr. Chair, nakasaad ang proseso po ng select sa pag-qualify at ang eventual appointment po ng general managers ng lahat po ng electric cooperatives.
So ano po yung hindi nasunod po sa pag-select kay Engineer Lucubin ng Board of Directors ng Bineco? I'm sorry ma'am, parang umikot-ikot na tayo. I think we were taking too much time on this very issue.
Yes, sir.
Ma'am, kasi ang kailangan ko lang po simple question answer eh. Ano nga
Opo.
po yung pagkukulang nitong Board of Directors ng Bineco para makialam po ang NEA para sabihin na per 2017-035 kami po yung mag-a-appoint kasi hindi kami sumunod sa proseso. Ano nga po yung mga hindi nasunod na proseso, ma'am?
Kaya nga po, nung pinadala na po sila ng sulat ng NEA na kailangan pong sumunod sa proseso under NEA 2017-035, nag-submit na po si Engineer Licuben sa proseso.
Ano nga
He
po yung proseso?
submitted to-
Ma'am, ano nga po yung, madam, ano nga po yung proseso?
Yun ho, sinasubject po yan sa IQ, EQ examination, sinasubject po
Yan
sa
po yun. Kasi ang
background
tagal po ma'am,
investigation.
pinikot-ikot niyo po ako eh. Yun, yung process is because hindi siya nag-pass ng EQ exam, IQ exam, etc. Yun lang po yun eh. Iniikot-ikot niyo ako. 2017, revised 2017, memo 035. Yun lang po yun. So, may problema po sa IQ. Itong si Engineer Lucubin, so mababa yung kanyang IQ, hindi siya pumasa. And then itong at the same time, yung kanyang EQ mababa din. So ibig sabihin, he's not qualified because of that. Naglagay kayo sa NEA. Madali naman ako makaintindi. Yun lang po yung gusto ko malaman.
Yes po. In
So,
other
you're
words
saying na
po,
itong si Lucubin, yung kanyang IQ.
ito po, kaya nga po, we are so sorry sir that hindi po ninyo natanggap yung pinadala namin sa inyo so that you could have had at least an advance info po on the
Ma'am,
progress.
kasi you're being technical on me. Kasi po mga netizens, yung mga followers ko, yung mga listeners ko, yung mga viewers ko, there are people na hindi masyado nakakaintindi ng technical. All they need is a simple answer. At binigyan nyo, simple answer to a simple question. Yun na po, binigyan nyo sa akin. Okay, then tatahimik na po ako. So, sa inyo pong palagay, hindi po pumasa itong si Engineer Lucubin dahil sa IQ test at EQ test. Yun lang
Hindi
po
po
yun.
ganun.
Okay. Kasi binanggit niyo po
If I
IQ
may
and EQ.
respond po, although it would be hard po na hindi ho po sana, we would have wanted po na sana ho makita niyo po talaga ang chronology. But just to address po immediately yung question ninyo. In other words po, after the final interview that was conducted by the board of the NEA board administrators, si Attorney Rafael po ang in-endorse nila for the general manager of Bineco. And as per the opinion po of the Office of the Government Corporate Counsel, sinabi po ng OGCC na na-disqualify po si Engineer Licuben because he failed to relinquish his position as OIC, which is provided po under NEA Memorandum 2017-035. And then the NEA Board of Administrators, after receiving po the board resolution of Bineco rejecting the NEA board resolution endorsing Attorney Rafael, NEA board passed a resolution appointing Attorney Rafael to the position. And this is exactly po now the subject of a pending Court of Appeals case which Engineer Licuben brought before the Court of Appeals, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Last na lang po, ma'am. So, therefore, dapat po lahat ng mga inelect po ng mga board of directors ng iba't ibang elected cooperative para maging patas po sa ngalan ng giging fair. Lahat po siguro sila i-undergo nyo rin po ng IQ and EQ test. Mali mo, baka meron dyan lalagpak at meron ulit kayo mga point na bago.
Ay, uniform po sir ang procedure. We are following a uniform procedure under the provisions of ito pong NEA 2017-035.
Okay.
This applies to all electric cooperatives po, Mr. Chair. Wala pong hindi ho dumadaan. Lahat ho ng general managers ng 121 electric cooperatives in the country ay dumaan po sa proseso as provided under NEA 2017-035 po.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Mr. Chair.
Ma'am, go ahead.
Mr. Chair,
Senator
just to
Wilson,
pursue this topic, Mr. Chair, I also filed a resolution, Mr. Chair, to look at the subsequent resolutions that were issued by NEA on the topic of appointing GMs, because under PD 269, and this is the National Electrification Administration Decree, which governs all the electric co-ops and the National Electrification Administration, that the EC enjoys the power to determine in its bylaws the manner of elections and filings of vacancies of its officers. So meron pong kapangarihan yung mga ECs to appoint their GMs. And this is in line with the principle of self-governance. Hindi naman ho pwedeng ang NEA mag-a-appoint ng mga GM, all 121 GM all over the country. That's why we have the board, so that the board can appoint a GM who is qualified based naman on the qualifications that NEA will issue. So NEA will issue the guidelines and the qualifications. The board will select their GMs based on their guidelines and appoint their GM. NEA can only step in kung ailing, kung may problema yung electric co-ops. But in this particular case, ang Beneco is in pre-pandemic level, before ho nagkagulo, ang kanyang category is green. Ang kanyang classification, AAA. These are the highest ratings electric co-op can receive. So that's why marami hong nagulat, marami ring mga member consumer owners na galit, because maganda naman yung patakbo, pero nag-appoint ng GM na galing ho sa ibang lugar. In fact, ang Baguio City ho nag-issue ng persona non grata against that GM, no, si Attorney Rafael yata, if I'm not mistaken, ang pangalan niya, because precisely even the city of Baguio, the local government, is enjoying good service. So that's why, Mr. Chair, we have to pursue this, because this will affect also the other electric co-ops who will be selecting their GMs in the future. Hindi naman ho pwedeng na lahat ng general manager manggagaling sa Metro Manila at magmamanage ng co-op sa probinsya, because the co-ops will know better. Sila, taga doon sila eh. No? Mr. Chair.
I agree with you, Senator Gatchalian. Wala ngang problema yung sa Beneco, as far as I'm concerned. From what I've heard, mababa nga yung kanilang rate doon. Yung singil nila, magandang performance, walang mga brownout. Bakit pinalitan? Yun nga po marami nagtatanong sa akin ng mga consumer na Beneco. Samantalang yung iba dyan, tulad sa Ormeco at iba't iba pang mga kooperatiba sa iba't ibang lugar, hindi nagagalaw, hindi napapakialaman. Bakit? Because those people behind doon sa mga may problema, mga kooperatiba, ang mga pagmamayari, ang mga padrino, mga matataas na ranggong politiko. Yun lang po yun eh. Meron kasing, ma'am, tumatawa kayo siguro na nakikita nyo na talagang nagsabi po ako na totoo na po. Yun nga po, hindi nagagalaw kasi po ang padrino, mataas na government official, makapangyarihan. Dito siguro sa Beneco, nakita na pagkakitaan, kaya pinakialaman. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Yun po yung kasabihan. Now, may tanong ko po, anong standard po ang ginagamit ninyo? Kasi po, ginamit nyo kanina yung salitang EQ at IQ, di ba? Para matest po kung qualified ho ba sa standard po, standard ng NEA? Qualified ba siya na maging general manager? Ano pong standard na ginagamit ninyo para i-test po yung isang in-appoint ng isang kooperatiba, whether pasado siya sa EQ at pasado siya sa IQ? Ano ginagamit niyo pong standard?
Mr. Chair, with your indulgence po, may I ask our Director po ng Institutional Development Department, which heads the selection committee po or screening committee for the general managers. I understand the EQ is being administered by the UP.
Okay? And the IQ,
What about?
ano ba dapat yan? 150 ang IQ, 200 para pumasa?
With your indulgence, Mr. Chair, may I give the microphone to our IDD Director, Director Noli Alamilio.
Sige po.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Honors. For the EQ exam, it is conducted by the UP Department of Psychology. And for the IQ exam, it is given by a technical person, a psychologist, Your Honors, from the NEA.
Okay. Now, this EQ and IQ exam that are being given doon po sa mga general manager ng iba't ibang kooperatiba, lahat ba ito across the board o namimili lang kayo o random lang po yung ginagawa nyo kung sino po yung kailangan ma-screen ninyo at dumaan dito sa prosesong ito? Lahat po ba o selective?
Your Honor, it applies to all applicants for general managers of electric cooperatives.
So lahat po. Lahat po ng mga applicants, lahat po na in-appoint. So ibig sabihin, kahit na po nag-appoint po yung kooperatiba na para sa kanila, they screen their appointee. Properly screen, pumasa para sa kanila, sa standard nila, kung ano man yung sinet nila standard para sila po pipili ng kanilang general manager. So, kung hindi po pumasa sa IQ at EQ, exam ninyo, bagsak po rin. Dito po tayo nagkakaproblema Sir So, useless pala. So, dapat, ang mga appointees dapat, ng mga kooperatiba, remit na lang po sa NEA. Huwag na lang po sa mga board of directors kasi anytime kahit na pumasa na po dito sa mga board of directors ng mga cooperatives, pwede naman po siyang ibagsak. Pwede siyang bumagsak o ibagsak sa NEA exam. Pwedeng sabihin lang na hindi ka pumasa sa EQ, hindi ka pumasa sa IQ. Just for that reason. So, tinanggalan niya po in a way autonomy dating po sa selection process. Ito pong mga kooperatiba. Because the final say pala is really from you guys, not from the directors. Do you follow me so far? Sir?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Go ahead, Senator Bato de la Rosa.
Yes, sir. I just would like to
Acknowledge.
mag-interject lang ako dahil I have to preside the hearing sa kabilang room, Launa.
Sige, Senator.
Gusto ko lang masingit, Mr. Chair, kung yung memorandum circular ng NEA na yon ay sa tingin ko masyadong micromanaging the electric cooperatives. Pag ganun na sila pa dito sa taas ang pipili kung sinong magiging GM doon sa baba. Parang, it runs counter to our, yung trend natin na local autonomy doon sa baba. Ay binababa na, devolution of powers tayo. Sa kanila naman, kabaligtaran. Hinihila, pataas yung power sa baba. So, parang you're not giving them the parang hindi na marunong mag-isip itong mga kooperatiba na ito. Tayo na ma-micromanage nito. Parang yan na nakikita ko. That's all, Mr. Chair. Dahil, kung alam niyo kung talagang ganun yan, mas mahirap pala maging isang general manager ng electric cooperative kaysa maging senador. Kaya dadaan ka sa butas ng karayom yung pag may EQ pa, may IQ test pa. Well, I appreciate that for purposes of kung talagang ina-applyan sa lahat, I appreciate that. Pero yun nga lang, kung ganun talaga kaganda yung patakbo ng mga kooperatiba, bakit marami pang nakakalusot ng mga questionable deals, Mr. Chair, which will be unraveled later pag tayong itong committee na ito will tackle the privilege speech delivered by our Senate President, yung problema natin sa napakataas na presyo ng kuryente ngayon doon sa Mindanao. At ito yung kagagawa ng mga, baka yung mga matataas na EQ level o matataas na IQ level ng mga managers kaya nagkaganito ito. That's all, Mr. Chair. Pasensya ka na, siningitan kita dahil mag-open ako doon sa kabila ng aking hearing. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maraming salamat po sa inyo lahat.
Thank you, Senator Bato de la Rosa, for that input. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, if I may add, dun po sa mga taga-NAIA, it really doesn't make any sense. Binanggit na nga ni Senator de la Rosa, yung mas mahirap yung pala maging general manager ng isang kooperatiba kaysa maging senador. Kasi senador, once you're voted by the people, then you're in. Dito pala sa general manager ng NAIA, binoto na siya ng mga board of directors who represents the consumers. Hindi po pala pwede, kailangan po masapa sa EQ and IQ test ng NAIA. And who the hell is NAIA para mag-set sila ng ganong klaseng patakaran para harangin yung mga taong binoto na ng kooperatiba who represent one more time the consumers. So dapat yan yung isa sa mga batas. Siguro kung ano yung mga memorandum order, I have to look into that. I will change that. It has to be changed. I don't see any reason bakit yan ay patuloy na mamamayagpag. It doesn't make any sense. Wala pong common sense. Diyan po sa pinagsasabi ninyo, yung po mga memorandum na yan, wala pong common sense. I'm sorry. For me, it doesn't make sense for the end time. Unless if the Vice Chairman would like to say something.
Well,
Senator
Mr.
Benito
Chair,
Villar.
pag tayo siguro dumaan ng EQ, IQ, baka bagsak rin tayo.
Malamang, by their standard,
Oo.
kailangan siguro nila, ang IQ is 200 para pumasa.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. Your thoughts are precisely the same as mine, and that's why I filed a resolution to look at this closely because NIA issued two memorandum circular. Basically, those memorandum circular states that they can appoint general managers, no? And for me, it's inconsistent with law, and it also runs counter to the self-governance mechanism of the electric co-ops. So on a later time, Mr. Chair, I think we should really look into this matter much deeper, no? So that there will be stability in the electric co-ops, and also the appointment of GMs will be fair and in accordance with law.
Okay, thank you for that, Senator Win Gatchalian. And then I may add, people in NIA, siguro mag-concentrate po kayo sa pag-iimbestiga po sa mga electric cooperative if they have that technical know-how. Because some of these cooperatives, electric cooperatives, okay, I'm not gonna mention names anymore because there's too many of them. Okay, wala po silang technical know-how. Some of them that doesn't even have the financial capability to put up an electric cooperative, meaning hindi po mahaba ang kanilang PC. And very important to me is the technical know-how. Wala silang kaalaman, sapat na kaalaman para magtayo ng isang electric cooperative. Wala silang sapat na kaalaman para alamin kung yung isang mga electric lines nila ay okay pa ba o kailangan ng palitan. Those kind of things. Yun po siguro, mas bigyan niyo po ng, tingnan po yung kanilang mga kontrata. Di ba? The generating companies. Kaysa naman, pakikialam niyo po yung general manager. And I'm very sorry, I'll be very blunt. Bakit po pinapakialaman? Ayon po sa mga netizens, sa mga observers, na pinapakialaman kasi kumikita. At kapag kumikita, may gusto makisawsaw. Diyan na naman tayo eh. Kasi gustong pumatong. Itigil na po natin yan. Kawawa po yung mga consumer. Makialam po kayo kapag may problema po. Ailing, sabi nga ni Senator Win Gatchalian. If the company is ailing, then that's the only time and I see valid reason for you to come in and see how you fix the problem. Pero kung walang problema, it's making money, it's doing good, the operation's good, huwag po pakialaman. Kasi pag pinakialaman niyo po, isa lang pong isipin ng taong bayan. Ang isipin nila, pinapakialaman niyo kasi gusto niyo makisawsaw. Yun lang po yun I'm sorry. Merong gustong kumita. May gustong magsaksak ng pera sa kanilang mga bulsa. Yun lang po yun I'm very sorry for the word. Yan naman tayo kaya wala nang katapusan ng korupsyon Kaya nga nagkagewang-gewang yung mga electricity natin sa Pilipinas dahil sa korupsyon. Yung may mga problema, yung pakialaman nyo, yung palagi nagba-brown out, hindi na-handle ng maayos, yung management, yun talaga dapat pakialaman nyo, hindi nyo kayong pakialaman. Paano? Baka mamaya, tadyakan lang kayo ng padrino ng mga yun Makakapangyarihan tao yung nasa likod pakialaman nyo, kung si governor nasa likod, tinabatukan pa kayo. Diba? O kung mga makapangyarihan tao nasa likod ng electric cooperative, hindi nyo kayang pakialaman yon. Pero yung walang padrino, yung madaling pakialaman. Yun lang po. Again, I'm sorry. Okay. Now, let's move on. And I'd like to acknowledge, recognize the presence of Senator Coco Pimentel, Minority Leader by Hybrid. Senator Pimentel, would you like to make any manifestation?
Wala na po, I'm here to listen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, let us now proceed to the presentation. Thank you, Senator Pimentel. Let us now proceed to the presentation from the PNOC. Other people from the PNOC? Okay, President and CEO, Jesus Posadas. Mr. Posadas, sir, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and the members of the Senate Committee on Energy.
Can we fix the audio of Mr. Posadas? Okay, we just lost Mr. Posadas.
The PNOC and its two subsidiaries, PNOC EC and PNOC RC, are GOCs.
I'm sorry, Mr. Posadas, we can't barely hear you. Mr. Posadas? Okay.
Sustainability.
If wala si Mr. Posadas, maybe we can have sabi si Attorney Irene. O di ba siya? Sam, Attorney Irene.
Yes, sir, we're ready to present.
Go ahead, Attorney Irene. Go ahead. Go with your presentation, Madam.
Sir, I think they're still sharing their presentation. Can we start sharing ours?
Go
They
ahead
need
po.
to unshare, sir. They need to unshare.
Okay.
Then-
Attorney Irene.
Yes,
Share
sir.
na dapat yung sa iba para makapasok na maayos yung audio and video ni Attorney Irene Garcia. Attorney Irene ng Pisam.
Yes, sir. So good
Welcome.
afternoon, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon to the honorable members of the Committee on Energy. And thank you for this chance to introduce to you PISAM, or the Power Sector Assets and Liabilities Management Corporation. So the presentation outline will basically cover the mandates under Republic Act 9136, or the EPIRA. And then I will mention to you the assets and liabilities that were moved to PISAM from National Power Corporation, and then our accomplishments vis-a-vis the mandates. So let me start by sharing with you the three main mandates po of PISAM. So the first one is to take ownership of all existing power and non-power assets of the National Power Corporation, except po for the SPUG, or the Small Power Utility Group. So together with the transfer of the assets from NPC to PISAM, they also transferred the liabilities po, which is related to our second mandate. We need to handle the orderly sale, disposition, and privatization of all these assets for the purpose of liquidating all the liabilities that we absorbed in an optimal manner.
And then the third mandate is to act as the administrator of the Universal Charge Fund, which was created by virtue of EPIRA. So Pisam is quite unique because we have a limited corporate life. We only have 25 years, and our 25 years will end this June 2026. At the end of Pisam's corporate life, we have to transfer to the national government whatever would be the remaining assets and liabilities. So the next slide will show you, sir, what are the assets and liabilities that got transferred to Pisam. So there are power plants, decommissioned plants, IPP contracts that govern power plants, real estate assets, and receivables. Meanwhile, the liabilities, sir, which consist of principal debts and lease obligations, that would amount to around 1.24 trillion liabilities that got moved to Pisam. On top of that, there were other assorted liabilities that were moved to Pisam for us to pay. So in total po, aside from the 1.24 trillion, kasama din po may 318.4 billion na ipinasa sa Pisam for us to pay. Next slide. So in terms of the asset privatization, we've already privatized 32 power plants, 7 IPP contracts governing power plants, 5 decommissioned plants, and real property assets po. So this is the figure, and including po the transmission asset of the Philippines, that's actually owned by Transco, and Transco is a subsidiary of Pisam as provided for in EPIRA. In terms of privatization proceeds, we have collected so far 706.475 billion in collections, and we have additional collections we are continuing to collect from our IPPA agreements. Next slide. So this next slide, sir, shows you the remaining assets of Pisam. So on the left side are the operating plants of Pisam. We have the Kaseknan Hydroelectric Power Plant. We only own 60% of Kaseknan. The 40% is owned by the National Irrigation Administration. Meanwhile, we have the power plants in Mindanao, the Agus 1 and 2, in Lanao del Sur, Agus 4 and 5 in Lanao del Norte, Agus 6 and 7 in Iligan City, and the Pulangi Hydroelectric Power Plant in Bukidnon. So on the right side of this slide, it shows you the remaining IPP contracts. Yung naiwan po would be CBK. It is covered by a build, rehabilitate, operate, and transfer agreement with CBK PLC up to Feb 2026. The Mindanao Coal, which is covered by a build, operate, transfer agreement with Stayag State Power up to July 2031. And the last one under the IPP column is the Mindanao 2 Geothermal or Mount Apo. But this one we are not going to privatize because this is a build, operate, own arrangement with EDC. So the government will not end up owning that. Next slide. So this next slide shows you basically po yung financial obligations na inabsorb namin, which we are paying. So from a high of 1.24 trillion, we have so far paid the liabilities, and it is now down to 355.9 billion. And the 355.9 billion consists of 272.9 billion in debts and 83 billion in IPP lease obligations. So far po, we have settled or paid 772.2 in debts, 678.9 in IPP lease obligations, and borrowing costs and interest charges of 426.2 for a total of 1.877 trillion. Okay, next slide. This next slide shows you, again, more details about the remaining financial obligations. We are at 355.88 billion as of middle of this year. The currency mix of the liabilities of Pisam is also shown in this slide. 56% is in US dollars, 40% in Philippine pesos, and 4% in Japanese yen. So, next slide, please. So our last mandate is on the universal charge. So we are the administrator of the universal charge, but they don't all go to PISAM. So the UCME goes to NPC. The UCME Red Sea goes to renewable energy developers. The universal charge for EC is zero now. We don't collect that anymore. But previously, when it was being collected, it would go to NPC SPAG. And then we have the universal charge for stranded contract cost, which goes to PISAM. But it is currently at zero. We are no longer collecting that. You won't see that in the bill, in your electricity bill. And what remains now po is the universal charge for stranded debts, which is at 4.28 cents per kilowatt hour. That is an imposition approved by ERC prior to the Murang Kuryente Act. Next slide, please. So basically, sir, this last slide shows the priority areas in conjunction with the mandates of PISAM. For our asset privatization, we will start with Kaseknan and CBK already for this year, but will end next year. We will also be disposing real estate assets. We will continue to collect receivables, which we absorb from NPC. We will proceed with our selling of energy for the remaining power plants. We will fund the operations of the remaining power plants. We will work with the DOE and DOF on the rehabilitation of Agus and Pulangi. We will continue with our tariff filings with the ERC. And for the financial obligations for this year po, may magmamature tayo na 89.2 billion in financial obligations, which we will pay. And then yung borrowing cost po of around 10 billion. And then we have the universal charge. We will continue to collect that. And of course, we will start planning for the winding down of PISAM's operations because our life will end in June 2026. So that's my last slide, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Ma'am, when you transfer your assets to the national government, what will be the practical consequence of this?
Sir, it would be dependent on the nature of the asset. Like if there is a decision for us to not privatize and to keep the Agus Pulangi, it has to go to the hands of an agency that could continue to operate it. Perhaps not the national government, maybe either one of the power companies that would be identified by the DOE. Meanwhile, for the lots, if there are lots that are not connected with the power plants, those could be transferred to the asset privatization office that is under the Department of Finance.
Thank you, Attorney Irene Garcia, Pisam. Thank you, and we may now continue. If the PNOC is already okay, the audio and video, I can see the President and CEO of PNOC, Mr. Jesus Posadas. Mr. Posadas, I'm sorry about a while ago. We got cut off, disconnected. Go ahead now, PNOC President and CEO Jesus Posadas. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members of the Senate Committee on Energy. PNOC and its two subsidiaries, PNOC EC and PNOC RC, are GOCCs implementing DOE strategic policy goals of energy security, energy access, energy affordability, and environmental sustainability. In the areas requiring focused government participation in the energy value chain, i.e. upstream energy resource development, be it fossil fuels and renewable energy, and downstream oil and gas sectors. The sequence of the presentation will be as shown in the screen. PNOC and its two subsidiaries will be presenting their mandates, vision, key programs and initiatives, and issues and concerns that we would like to convey to the Senate Committee on Energy. PNOC was created on November 9, 1973, as a response to the world oil situation of crisis proportions in that same year, and to embark on measures to ensure stable supply of petroleum products to support economic growth and social well-being of the nation on behalf of the Philippine government. Shared in the screen is PNOC's mandate under PD 334 as amended by PD 927. PNOC's mandate is centered on the declared policy of the state to promote industrial and overall economic development through the effective and efficient utilization of energy sources, including oil and oil-based resources. PNOC's vision is that by 2030, PNOC has provided vital energy resource development and energy infrastructure conducive to a clean environment and balanced and sustainable growth of the economy. Next slide, please. Originally, PNOC's mandate is undertaken by its 24 subsidiaries, specifically focused on distinct energy activities. Over the years, however, these subsidiaries were either privatized or abolished. Currently, PNOC has only two subsidiaries, namely PNOC Exploration Corporation and PNOC Renewables Corporation, who will be presenting separately for this in this meeting. With the privatization and abolition of subsidiaries, PNOC was mandated by the government's Governance Commission for GOCCs in 2014 to transform and reorganize from a purely holding company to an operating company. PNOC's reorganization plan was approved in July 2018 and its implementation started in 2019. As an operating company approved by the GCG in 2014, PNOC assumed all remaining assets and liabilities and ongoing programs and projects of the dissolved subsidiaries. In addition, PNOC continues to undertake the development of future energy programs and projects pursuant to its mandate. In the pursuit of PNOC's mandate and in order to respond to new challenges, the following key programs and initiatives request for critical congressional and Senate approval and support. First is the National Strategic Petroleum Reserve and also the related Targeted Fuel Relief Program. Third, the sale and monetization of bank gas. Fourth, the development of vital energy infrastructure, which are the energy supply base in Batangas, supporting oil and gas upstream exploration and development, and the PNOC Industrial Park in Bataan, supporting midstream and downstream energy and petrochemical industries. The National Strategic Petroleum Reserve is the development of a permanent strategic oil stockpile to ensure long-term stability and security of oil supply in the country, especially in times of severe disruptions in oil supply due to geopolitical events, calamities, or emergencies, which the deregulated privatized downstream sectors minimum inventory requirement will not be able to address, particularly the continued operation of the government social services, police, and the armed forces. Currently, PNOC is targeting to engage the transaction advisor within the fourth quarter of 2022 and have the feasibility study completed within 9 months. As differentiated but taken in tandem with the SPR or the Strategic Petroleum Reserve is the Targeted Fuel Relief Program, which is a proposed immediate government response program which aims to aid the most vulnerable fuel consuming sectors of our economy during the periods of fuel supply disruption and or high volatility on prices through importation and distribution of discounted fuel. Initial beneficiaries will be the public utility jeepney drivers and operators being the most affected sector. One of PNOC's major assets is its bank gas, and its sale and monetization being consistent with the government efforts to spur additional power generation and contribute to electric power supply security. In September 2009, PNOC purchased from the DOE bank gas equivalent to 108.6 petajoules at 14.4 billion pesos. Currently, PNOC has two gas supply and purchase agreements with First Gen subsidiaries and another GSPA with South Premier Power Corporation. However, no delivery of bank gas has been made by the SE38, the consortium, for the GSPA with SPPC, effectively reducing by 6.5% the available supply to the Luzon grid, corresponding to the 1,200 megawatts capacity of the Ilihan gas power plant. As of 25 June 2022, the inventory of PNOC's bank gas has been fully contracted, while the remaining unwithdrawn inventory stands at 96.026 petajoules, with a net value of US dollars 1.159 billion. The PNOC Industrial Park, created under PD 949 as amended by the Republic Act 10516, is a 530-hectare property located in Limay and Baribelas, Bataan, servicing companies involved in the petrochemical, energy, and energy-related industries. It provides basic services such as the provision of raw and firewater, power, and jetty services to its locators. Currently, PNOC is undertaking negotiations for companies for the possible development of a circular plastic to petrochemicals manufacturing facility and LNG power plant. PNOC continues to undertake the operation and efficient management and improvement of the industrial park and its jetty facilities while continuing to ensure environmental monitoring and compliance to DENR regulations. Last but not least, the PNOC Energy Supply Base, created under Letter of Instruction number 563, series of 1977, to provide support in logistical facilities for onshore and offshore exploration activities in petroleum and other energy-related fields, is located in a 19.2-hectare property in Mabini, Batangas. It is the only energy supply base in the country. PNOC's vision for ESB is to provide world-class energy supply-based port facilities and offer services compliant with international standards. In line with this vision, the ESB Port Developmental Detailed Feasibility Study, Environmental Impact Assessment, and Detailed Engineering Design were completed on December 15, 2020, and approved by the PNOC Board on February 26, 2021. That ends our presentation, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, PNOC President and CEO, Mr. Posadas. I just have one question, sir. With the current fluctuation of price of oil in the world market, and obviously there's a crisis ongoing, how can we as legislators, as far as you're concerned, come up with laws that would help in trying to stop or minimize the fluctuation of oil prices?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, in response to that, Mr. Chair, we have a program which is a targeted fuel relief program with a budgeted amount of 2.5 billion pesos, which we would like to be approved and passed as a budget, but not only as a budget, Mr. Chair, but also as a revolving fund, so that when we issue this to the affected sectors, like for example the public transport sector as well as farmers and fisher folk, this can be rotated in terms of funding, because if only the budget as is approved, we will just be only doing a one cycle. When we are able to issue this to the affected sector, we will not be able to sustain doing this social safety net, Mr. Chair. So we would really request the Senate Committee on Energy support for this particular targeted fuel relief program as an immediate program to help the most affected sectors. The other program that we have, Mr. Chair, is also our Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which is a long-term program that we would like to establish so that when there are severe oil supply disruption, like for example, which has happened when the Saudi Arabia facilities were attacked, drone attack in 2019, and or even disruptions in the oil supply, maybe blockage in the sea lanes. We will have a strategic petroleum reserve, which which will address more severe disruptions, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you for your input, PNOC President and CEO, Jesus Posada. Thank you, sir. And okay, we can move on. And I can see Senator Coco Pimentel is being recognized. Senator Coco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is now the time to ask questions about...
Go ahead. Yes, Senator Pimentel, you can ask
I can, parang
questions.
follow up din po ito sa tanong ninyo kanina kasi. Si Mr. Posadas gave a presentation. Ang sabi niyo po, sir, on the slide ng key programs and initiatives that you need the legislative support for this. Did I hear you correctly?
Yes, Mr. Chair, in terms of approval of the budget, Mr. Chair, with the special provision that it becomes a revolving fund, Mr. Chair.
Which one? Sa lima? Kasi I'm looking at the key programs and initiatives slide.
Dito sa number targeted fuel relief, Mr. Chair, number 2.
Which of the 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, do you still need legislative support, and which ones of the 5 are you can do on your own?
Actually, Mr. Chair, we need a special provision in the GAA, which will make the targeted fuel relief fund, which is 2.5 billion pesos, to become a revolving fund. Because as recommended by the DBM, it is only as a budget, which is a one-time expenditure. And we would like to seek the Senate Committee on Energy support that it becomes a revolving fund, Mr. Chair, Mr. Senator Coco.
So among the 5, yan lang yung talagang paulit-ulit yung binabanggit, no? Pero si number 1, sir, si National Strategic Petroleum Reserve, do you need a law to authorize this?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Today, what's happening is we have always been, our hands are always tied to act in the absence of a continuing law to establish the SPR, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, Mr. Chair, because it is something that will become permanent.
Sige, tama yun, sir, pero magaganda tong slides natin. Ang kulang lang mga detalye, kaya nga that's why napilitan na rin ako magtanong. Magandang idea yun for the Philippines to have a national strategic petroleum reserve, but the details, kailangan siguro yung details ng konsepto, how many liters, and then how will this be financed? This is a physical, di ba? The physical custody yan, where shall this be secured? Mga ganun po yan eh. And then, meron kayong sinabi that you are already engaging or have engaged an SPR transaction advisor, parang may 9 months study to go. How much did we budget for this study po, feasibility study?
Well, the pesos, which is still subject to...
Sir, can you restate it? Wala yung wala, naputol po.
The budgeted amount... The budgeted amount, Mr. Chair, is 100 million pesos, Mr. Chair, which is still will be reviewed by the Secretary. Actually, we have we will still be presenting this to our Secretary because we would like to see the details. The basic concept, Ms. Senator, is that today the uh, uh, the downstream oil industry is just mandated to hold what is called the minimum inventory requirement, or the MIR, which is 30 days for refineries, 15 days for importers, and 7 days for LPG. What we're thinking is over and above what the private sector is mandated as a minimum to hold, government should be in a position to address a severe oil disruption that is over and above the what is mandated as a minimum inventory requirement, Mr. Chair, Mr. Senator Coco.
Yes,
And
yes, yes. But ito kasi minimum inventory requirement mo are in private hands, di ba?
yes, Senator, yes.
Itong National Strategic Petroleum Reserve na proposal ninyo will be in government's hands, tama?
Yes, Senator.
Okay,
That's
so
correct.
well, the idea is very nice. Ang tanong na lang siguro, bali in the future siguro, given with the details, ano yung the cost. Tsaka kaya ko binanggit sir yung bayad natin sa consultant natin for a study. 100 million ang plano nating ibayad dyan. Make sure na talagang meron tayong resulta and report it to Senate kasi, to the Senate or to the Congress. Kasi si Senator Win Gatchalian has periodically reminded us that the Senate funded 266 million pesos, correct me if I'm wrong, for the feasibility study of nuclear power. We have not seen that study. So that's why mag-ingat po kayo sa mga ganyan kasi hahanapin talaga namin yung study na yan at it must be worth the amount that we are paying for it, no?
We'll do that, Senator. In fact, we have just passed the joint DOE and PNOC Strategic Petroleum Reserve Company. The committee has just approved the TOR for the procurement, for the engagement of the transaction advisor, which still will be reviewed by our secretary.
Opo. Kami nakatingin kami sa the amount that we're spending and the product, the result. Kailangan yung result must be value for money. It must be worth the money of the spent by the Filipino people. Hirap panahon. Anyway, last na lang po, ito na lang po. Itong targeted fuel relief program, it appears to me that you want to be implementing the said program. I think which is better implemented by our DSWD. Di ba tayo nagdodoble-doble lang ng kilos tapos ang funding napunta pa sa inyo imbis na ipunta na lang natin yan sa DSWD?
Well, the difference, Mr. Senator, is that we are doing it in terms of discounted fuel rather than in terms of money. So we intend this not to be a dole out, but to be a sustainable fund. That's why we're looking at making it a revolving fund, Mr. Senator.
Okay, so parang ano na rin yan. Ano yung nung panahon, anong tawag niyo doon, sir? Yung may fund na oil price stabilization fund. You just want to do it in a smaller scale. Tina-target nyo lang yung bibigyan nyo ng discount. And the fund absorbs the discount that you're giving this limited number of people. Di ba? Tama po? That's the idea?
Oh, the idea, good Senator, is that we will make this sustaining. In other words, we should not be incurring losses so that it will become a sustainable fund and social protection to the affected sectors, Mr. Senator.
Okay, that's a very nice theory, pero tingnan natin in practice. Anyway, Mr. Chairman, I don't want to eat up all the time of the committee, so at least napakita lang natin that, when you make presentations here, we will sometimes, we have to ask the details and maybe we need another setting or maybe during the budget process, we will ask for more details po. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senate Minority Leader Coco Pimentel. Senator Win Gatchalian, the
Thank
Vice
you.
Chair of this committee. Go ahead,
Thank
Senator.
you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for the opportunity. To Yusek Posadas. Yusek, I want to pursue where the minority floor leader left off. The revolving fund for the targeted fuel relief. Anong kaibahan ho nito with Pantawid Pasada?
Well, the difference, good Senator, is that we are doing this in terms of discounted fuel rather than money. So the whole idea is for us to be able to uh, provide a sustainable social protection to the affected sector, like for example, public transport and the farmers and fisher folks that will be identified by the DA, for example, Mr. Chair, good Senator.
So Yusek, government will buy the fuel and sell it at a discount. Is that how the mechanism will work?
Yes, yes, sir. We intend to buy this during the bear months or the bear periods in the cycle in the fuel pricing cycle. Just like, for example, if we were already prepared at that time when COVID struck, and the price, we were even being paid to just get the fuel. So that would have been a very good time for government to have gotten the inventory, so that when, for example, what had happened after the Ukraine-Russia war, all the prices flew, and that would have been a very good opportunity for uh, giving good discounted fuels, good Senator.
How will this be distributed to the motorist? How do you plan to distribute it?
Yeah, we will be designating specific service stations, good Senator. In fact, there will be two modes of doing this. Either government will do the importation itself and get a third party to distribute, or we will co-load and co-purchase with a given oil company, and the it will be a package deal, including a distribution, distribution activity. In partnership, of course, with the industry players, Mr. Che, in the budget, because at this point in time, we still do not have storage and receiving facilities as well as the distribution network, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Yusek Posadas. Well, I commend the corporation. I commend PNOC for trying to find ways to alleviate the increase in fuel prices and also, as much as possible, stabilize the supply through those type of programs that you mentioned, including this targeted fuel relief. I just have two concerns about that, and we can discuss this later on as we go deeper into the program. Number one, I can already hear the PCC, the Philippine Competitive Commission, um, voicing their, I would assume, they will voice their opposition on the concept of on opposition on this concept, on the concept of competitive neutrality, no, in which, of course, the government competing with the private sector in this case, no, government buys and then will be distributing the fuel supply to motorists, in which this concept is directly competing with the private sector because they are also in the same business. At the same time, and I know the chairman is also passionate about this, is corruption. No? Whenever government buys, alam naman natin may nangyayari dyan. No? So, would like to also voice out that opinion and put that on record because the whole reason why we deregulated the oil sector is precisely to do away with purchasing of oil by government, no? Because we all know what happened in the past, and that's why I just want to flag the um, the 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 corporation on those two issues, and later on we can discuss safeguards on how to go about this. The other one, Mr. Chair, with your permission, is on the bank gas. And I saw in the presentation earlier that there were buyers of bank gas. And I read in the news report, I was actually reading now, that San Miguel also bought a piece of that bank gas, no? 70 petrojoules, if I'm not mistaken, no? In the news report. But I don't see that in the. I saw it now, no. But what is the status of that, no? Of the purchase by San Miguel? I think this is SPPC.
Yes, good Senator. Well, we're saddened that no deliveries has been made on this sale of remaining bangkas. That's the last remaining quantity of the total banggas quantity, good Senator. Uh, it's because the SC38 consortium has not heeded the directives of the DOE for them to deliver the quantity. They are using the SC38 is giving us the excuse that there is lack of because of the diminishing quantity of pressure of the Bangas reservoir. They are unable to deliver on that contract. But it is very surprising that there was a GSPA or a gas sale and procurement agreement prior to June 5, when we started our GSPA with SPPC. SPPC was being supplied by a previous GSPA up to June 4 of the 2022. And surprisingly, that after June 4, it becomes zero. That's why to us, that is very unreasonable that government funds, public funds, are not being monetized on the pretext that the physical quantity is not present. So that's why I have recommended that if they cannot deliver in terms of natural gas, physical, they should return the money because these are public funds that the government has paid for the first 5 years of the Balampaya program. Government share was not given to government because of the take or pay provision. But therefore, these government funds amounting to $1.159 billion should be monetized and not put to risk, good Senator.
You said the 70 petrojoules that PNOC sold, who owns the gas?
PNOC owns the gas.
So it's the Republic of the Philippines who owns the gas.
Yes,
Correct.
we were transferred the gas from DOE, and we paid for it at 14.4 billion pesos, good Senator.
And I saw in the news report the value of the sale is at $1.2 billion.
Yes.
So that
Yes.
means $1.2 billion will go to the coffers of government.
Yes.
So
Yes.
how come the consortium, in which PNOC is also part of it, no? You have a 10% equity on that or 10% participation on that. How come the consortium is not allowing the delivery? Atin na ho yan eh. The Republic of the Philippines own that 70 petrojoules. So
Yes.
that's $1.2 billion should go to the programs of the government. So the consortium is in violation of their contract, and they're violating a basic principle of fulfilling their mandate because they have to
Yes.
deliver that 70 petrojoules to us.
Yes. In fact, good Senator, PNOC EC is the entity that has the 10% equity in the consortium. That's why we were telling PNOC EC, our subsidiary, that they should not be looking only at the 10% interest. We should be looking at the 64% interest of government, because government has a 60% share of the net operating revenue of the output of the consortium, plus the 10% of the 40. So that we should be looking at the 64% ownership of government, not only of the 10% of the PNOCEC.
Yusek, I thank you for taking that position, no? Because that's also personally my position that the consortium should deliver that 70 petajoules. Atin na ho yan eh. No? At yung pera, atin na ho rin yan. At they violated the contract by not delivering a property, no? That is owned by the Republic of the Philippines. So I thank you for taking that position. And my last question is, what's the course of action? Hindi naman ho pwedeng nakatiwangwang lang ho to.
Well, the course of action, Mr. Chair, is that, as the Secretary was saying, whether whoever are the members of the consortium, that's a commitment of the consortium. Whether it will be extended or not extended, they should bring that back to the government. If not in natural gas form, in cash form, in monetary form. So it could be or a combination of both.
Well, that is very clear. And on a later hearing, Mr. Chair, I would like to also pursue this because, again, no, $1.2 billion will disappear from the coffers of government. And we all know that we are scrambling for fresh funds, no, to fund a lot of our COVID response or COVID projects. So we'll pursue this later on, Mr. Chair, but I would like to encourage I'm telling the corporation PNOC to pursue this, no, because definitely the much needed funds will help a lot of programs, no, to be funded by government. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair, Committee on Energy, Senator Win Gatchalian. Thank you. And thank you, Yusek Jesus Posadas. For lack of material time, I regret to inform the body that we will have to adjourn this meeting. And we'll just request all parties concerned to just submit their presentations and position papers relative to the discussions of this meeting. Thank you all for your presence. And with that, this meeting is hereby adjourned.